Hello crafters, it's Sarah from Crafty Creatures here with our Big Bear Little Bear painting. For your painting today, you're going to need our templates. You should go ahead and cut those out first. A nice sharp pencil, our large and small paintbrushes, some paints. We need white, yellow, red, and some black, and something to wash our brushes in. This is what it looks like at the end, so let's get started. First things first, we're going to turn our canvas this direction. This is landscape. It's wider than it is tall. And we're going to go ahead and draw really nice and light, a nice ground line. So this doesn't have to be very tall, doesn't have to be perfectly flat. And on top of that, we're going to trace our bears. So I'm just doing one big bear, one little bear. You can do more than one little bear, especially if you have maybe brothers or sisters, because that would look really cute to have a couple little bear cubs. So I'm pressing pretty dark so that it's nice and easy to see. I recommend drawing really light. One, it's nice and easy to erase if you make a mistake. And two, because we're working with some nice pastel colors, sometimes if we press really hard, our pencil lead can kind of smudge our paints a little bit and make our colors a little bit more grayish. So there's two little bears done. Next I'm going to draw two rows of mountains, one kind of in the middle, one a little bit higher up. So I'm not making them super jagged and pointy. I'm making them a little bit smooth, just so they look really nice and pretty. Now it is time to paint. We're going to do a bit of color mixing today. So we're going to start with getting a whole bunch of white, 2 or 3 really big scoops. I took about 3 or 4 there, and make them nice and big. You're going to blob in some yellow there, about the same amount of yellow as you did white. And a little bit of red. We can always add a little bit more. We just want to start with a little bit because red is a very strong mixing color. So I'm going ahead and mixing that. I've decided I wanted a tiny bit more orange, so I'm adding just a little bit more red. And this is the kind of color we get. It's not quite orange, but it's yellow with a little bit of an orange tinge to it. Now I like to turn my canvas so it's easier to paint certain areas. And I'm going to go ahead and use up what's on my little brush here to kind of go along my lines before I switch to my big brush. That way I'm using up all my paint. Now one thing to know when you're mixing color, especially on a flat surface, try to keep it in a nice little area. You don't want to spread it out too thin, because then you're going to be ending up painting your surface more than you're actually mixing the color. Now I'm painting in my sky here. This is that top section above our mountains. And I'm really smoothing out my paint. You can see how I'm going back and forth quite a bit. This just helps our sky look very smooth, and it helps us use all of our paint. Now that we've finished the sky, we're going to go ahead and wash those brushes really well. And we're going to grab a couple more big scoops of white. Again, work with big scoops. We're going to grab a little scoop of our yellowy orange. If you don't have any, just grab a bit more yellow. And we're going to go ahead and add little bits of red till we get a nice light salmony pink color. We don't want it too dark yet. We're kind of working from light to dark here. And this is this nice salmony pink color I have here, and I'm going to paint in those far mountains. Those are the ones that are closest to the sky. And again, I like to use up whatever is left on my little paintbrush before I switch to that big one. This just helps me use up all the paint. So there's nothing worse than running out of a paint color that you've mixed, because then you have to mix it again. Just like before, I'm going nice and slow along my edges, and I'm keeping a lot of paint on my brush near my edges. This is going to keep those lines really sharp. As our paintbrush runs out of paint, the bristles kind of spread out, and that's how we end up with fuzzy lines. And in a painting like this, we want those lines really crisp and sharp. Just like before, I'm spreading that paint out nice and smooth. And I'm trying to go side to side as much as I can. This just makes our painting look bigger. And again, we're going to wash those brushes and prepare for our next color. So I'm just grabbing a bit more white because I was getting low on my color. I'm adding a little bit more yellow because I was very low on my orange there. And I'm going to add in some more red. This time I want a darker shade. I don't want it quite to the red yet. This should be more of a rosy pinkish red. And you can see when I put it down next to the first color of mountains that it looks darker, but not too dark. So I'm going to go ahead and use my smaller paintbrush to get in all these small areas and to trace around my bears. I'm going extremely slow. This video is sped up, but I'm going very, very slow, and I'm taking my time. I'm keeping a lot of paint on that brush, and you can see how nice and crisp those lines are getting. And I'm filling in these little areas between the legs of the bear. I'm tracing around my bears. This way I can go in with my bigger paintbrush, and it's just a little bit safer. I don't have to worry about having to get too close to any of my small details. A big brush can be great for filling in big areas, but it's a little more scary trying to go up next to complicated shapes. I'm just tracing around my mountains here just so I have a nice divide between the two. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch to that big brush to fill in the rest. And as always, I'm painting nice and smooth. It's a little harder to go purely side to side with this because of the bear, so I'm switching back and forth quite a bit. And for my last color, I'm going to add in a little bit of black to my red. You can see that I started to put it on there and realized that it wasn't quite dark enough. So I'm going to add in tiny, tiny bits of black. A little bit of black will go a long way. Black, like red, is a very powerful mixing color. So we just want to add a teeny little bit till that red just gets a little bit darker. It's going to look really, really nice against all these light colors because we'll have this darker shade. And I'm just doing all of this with my little paintbrush because we have a lot of small areas, and my ground line is pretty low to the bottom. So I don't really need to use that big brush. Sometimes I do a lot of my paintings just with this one small brush. Now with this color, sometimes you might need a second coat after about 10 minutes. I didn't because I felt it looked pretty good. I put it on fairly thick. But if you find it looks kind of patchy, you can always let it dry and add a little bit more on top. And I ended up switching to my big brush just for that last little bit, just to finish off this little section here. And that's it. Our painting this time around was a little bit more simple, but it looks beautiful. I hope yours turned out awesome, and I'm sure it did. Hope you guys have a good day, and we'll see you next time for our next painting. Bye-bye.